As I walked up the jetway into the main terminal of San Francisco International Airport, I glanced at my watch. It was 2:35. That was Central Time. I was now in the Pacific Time Zone, so it was actually 12:35. It took me 45 minutes to retrieve my luggage at the baggage claim and pick up my rental car. After that I had to negotiate the freeway traffic into the city. By the time I pulled up in front of the Clay Mountain it was 2:45. The Clay Mountain was a small 4-star luxury hotel. It only had 16 rooms. All of them were suites. My suite was actually 2 rooms. The front room was a small, but very elegant, living room with a love seat, a coffee table, an easy chair and an ottoman, a large writing desk and of course, a 32-inch flat-screen television set. The bedroom was equally elegant and had a king-size bed, an adequate closet and a marble bathroom with both a large bathtub and a shower stall. I was going to be very comfortable. After I unpacked and stored my luggage, I decided to go for a short walk. A block west of the Clay Mount I passed a bar and restaurant called the White Horse Tavern. A neon sign in the window advertised steaks and chops. It was 5:15 Pacific Time, but my stomach was still on Central Time. I was hungry. I went inside. After a tossed salad, a small sirloin steak, a baked potato and 2 bottles of Heineken beer I felt much better. Revitalized, I decided to take a walk. It was a long walk. By the time I returned to the Clay Mount it was after 9 o'clock. In my room, I watched an hour of television and went to bed. The next morning I was up at 5:30. My body was still on Central Time. After a shower, a shave and a room service breakfast I set up my laptop computer on the desk in the front room and used MapQuest to get directions to Reitman Construction. Their office was about 2 miles west on Geary Boulevard. At 7 o'clock I picked up myself from the valet and left for Reitman Construction. On the way I stopped at a Starbucks where I bought a large cup of coffee and a copy of the San Francisco Chronicle. At 7:30 I pulled into the parking lot of the Reitman Construction office. I waited in my car, drinking my coffee and reading the newspaper. At 7:55 I went inside. A middle-aged blonde with a pretty face was seated behind a reception desk. She was drinking a cup of coffee and filing her fingernails with an emery board. When she heard me come in she looked up at me and smiled. "Hi honey, what can I do for you?" She had an accent, probably Texas. "Hi, I'm Frankie Reese." She immediately stood up. "Mr. Reese, welcome to Reitman Construction. I'm Janet. If there's anything you need, just let me know and I'll take care of it for you. You'll be working with Derek Maxwell. He's in his office. He's expecting you. I'll call him." Janet picked up the telephone on her desk and pushed a button. After a second she said, "Mr. Maxwell, Mr. Reese is here." A moment later a door opened and a man in his early 30s emerged with his hand extended. "Mr. Reese, welcome to Reitman Construction. I'm Derek Maxwell." After that things happened quickly. I was introduced to the rest of the staff, assigned an office. It was next to Derek's office and given an orientation. At noon, Derek and I had lunch with Mark Reitman. Mark Reitman is the owner and chief executive officer of Reitman Construction. We had sandwiches in his office. Derek and I spent the afternoon in meetings. By the end of the day I had a reasonably good idea of what I was going to be doing for Reitman Construction. They had a contract to inspect and renovate 56 freeway bridges in the San Francisco Bay Area. 6 of their construction crews were assigned to this project. They estimated that it would take a crew approximately 6 weeks to renovate each bridge. They had 1 year to complete the project and face stiff penalties if they failed to stay on schedule. Derek and I had the task of inspecting each bridge and determining exactly how much time was going to be required to renovate it. If a crew fell behind we also had to figure out why and determine what was needed to get them back on schedule. Derek and I spent Saturday and all of the following week visiting the bridges that were currently undergoing renovation. We tried to get to know the 6 crews that were working on them and observed and assessed the progress each crew was making. Derek was also a mechanical engineer. We were partners on this project. That was fine with me. He was easygoing and bright. I enjoyed working with him. The work days were long. I fell into a routine. Each morning I had an early room service breakfast and met Derek at the Reitman Construction office before 7 o'clock. Our workday generally ended at 6 o'clock, so I rarely returned to the hotel before 6:45. I didn't have a kitchen, which meant that if I wanted dinner I was faced with the choice of either room service or the White Horse Tavern. The Sunday morning following my second full week in California, I checked my email while I was eating my room service breakfast. I noticed that I'd received one from Kendall. As I excitedly opened it, I smiled. Dana hadn't wasted any time changing her name back to Kendall. After pouring myself a second cup of coffee, I started reading. "Dear Frankie, how is your new job? I assume they're keeping you busy. I hope you're finding a little time to enjoy San Francisco. You told me that you were going to be living in a luxury hotel. Is it nice? I would think that living in a hotel, regardless of how nice it was, would eventually get boring, But maybe you're spending so much time at work that it doesn't matter. I'm as happy as I've been in years. I hadn't realized how miserable I was living with Pete. It feels like the clouds have parted, and the sun is once again shining on my life. I'm actually enjoying being at home. The Wednesday after you left, Katie called me. After talking for a little while, we decided to have dinner together that night. We met at Murphy's. I had a wonderful time and Katie did too. We spent a lot of time talking about you. She also wanted me to meet Andrea, so as we were leaving she invited me to have dinner with the two of them at your house the following Friday night. I accepted. It turned out to be a wonderful evening. After dinner we started talking. We talked all night. We never went to bed. Frankie, I am now convinced that Katie loves you. I also think I understand why she was infatuated with Pete and why she did things with him that she refused to do with you. I hope that someday you will give her an opportunity to try to explain it to you. That night Katie, Andrea and I became friends. I really like them and I believe they like me too. I know you don't like Andrea, but I think circumstances may have caused you to misjudge her. She really is a very nice person. Katie told me that she tried to persuade her to stop seeing Pete. After talking to them all night, I believe her. If you eventually meet Andrea, I hope you will give her a second chance. Anyway, after staying up all night, we had breakfast together Saturday morning. After breakfast they invited me to join them for dinner at Braddis Tuesday evening. I accepted. Frankie, I hope you understand. It's been years since I was able to go out with other women. Tuesday night the three of us had a nice dinner at Braddis. After dinner we stayed for the dancing. It was fun. We each danced with several different men, and then it just sort of happened. All three of us found guys we liked and we danced with them for several songs. When we sat back down at our table to take a break, all three of the men joined us. Andrea was with a guy named Bill, Caddy's guy was named Andy, and the guy I was with was Nate. He was a very handsome middle-aged stockbroker. After we'd been sitting together for a few minutes, Katie and Andrea got up to go to the ladies' room. They asked me to join them. Andrea is a backseat bunny. Katie is too. Yes, she still is. Oh my God. I don't believe that I just wrote that to you, but that's how I felt and I want to be honest with you. Frankie, well, I've known you for a couple of years. Up until the last few weeks we were just business acquaintances. In my mind at least, that's changed. I now consider you to be a close friend, and I hope you feel the same way about me. I also have to admit that right now I'm kind of confused. Katie, Andrea and I have become friends. I really like them and I think they like me too. I know you're angry with Katie, but as I told you earlier, I'm now convinced that she loves you, and I think I understand why she was infatuated with Pete and why she did things with him that she refused to do with you. I really do hope that someday you'll give her an opportunity to try to explain it to you. I can't believe that I'm actually telling you about this. I hope I'm not offending you, but it was an amazing evening, and I feel like you're my friend. I want to share it with you. I discussed this with Katie and Andrea. They both encouraged me to write to you and be very honest. Katie still loves you. She's convinced that she's lost you and understands that it was her fault. All of it was her fault. She lied to you about who she is and fully understands why you can't forgive her for doing that. I suspect that forgiving herself might even be more difficult for her. She desperately wishes she could turn back time and start over. Frankie, I repeat that I hope that someday you will find it in your heart to forgive her. I'm getting to know Katie. She really is a kind, loving soul. I understand why you fell in love with her. When I walked into the bar, Andrea and Katie were already back. They were seated alone at our table. Their men had also gone home immediately after their trysts. As it turns out, that's considered to be the appropriate etiquette for casual liaisons at Braddis. Apparently everyone wants to avoid emotional entanglements. We spent about 20 minutes sitting at the table gossiping. At 11 Andrea pointed out that it was a work night, and suggested that we call it an evening. Katie and I agreed. On the way out of the bar Katie invited me to join them on Friday. It was the weekly evening out for the girls at the insurance agency, where she and Andrea worked. I eagerly accepted. Frankie, I'd just had a wonderful time. That Sunday you came over to the office to tell my dad and me about Pete and Katie. I confided in you that I wished I had some female friends who liked going out. I also told you that I wanted some adventures. Katie and Andrea are both intelligent, nice women who like to have fun. Being included in their circle of friends was exactly what I needed. I did meet them on Friday night. The other girls from their office are all very nice. We spent the early part of the evening eating dinner and gossiping. When the dancing started some of the women left, but Katie, Andrea, myself and several other girls stayed. We all danced. Katie, Andrea and I are getting together for dinner on Tuesday. I can't wait. These evenings out are becoming the highlights of my week. Frankie, I just read what I wrote to you. I guess as I wrote it down, I was sort of reliving the experience. I was going to tone it down a little, but then I changed my mind. I don't know what kind of a relationship you and we'll end up having. I hope we'll become close friends. Maybe we'll be fuck buddies. I don't think we can ever be lovers, especially now that I've become friends with Katie. Frankie, she loves you so much. Losing you is tearing her apart. Anyway, I decided to send you this email the way I originally wrote it. Hopefully, it will help you understand who I am and what I want out of life right now. At this point in my life, I want to be able to experience that adventure to the fullest extent possible. I hope you're coming home for a visit in the near future. You promised me a dinner at the Kensington Grill. I'm holding you to that promise. I look forward to seeing you. Love, Dana. I sat back in my chair. I was stunned. I didn't know what to think or do. I didn't know how I was supposed to react. For several minutes I sat frozen in total silence. Finally, I stood up and started pacing around the front room of my hotel suite, muttering. I banged my shin against the coffee table in front of the love seat. Grabbing my leg, I shouted. I collapsed into my easy chair. The pain in my leg really wasn't that bad. It was the pain in my heart that was causing my agony. I started to cry and then I sobbed. All of the misery and torment that I'd stored up inside me during the past few weeks came boiling out. I wailed and I swore. I moaned out every obscenity I could think of. I grieved. I grieved for the loss of my life with Katie, and I grieved because I was now alone. It took me almost an hour to purge myself of all the poison that had been festering in my heart. But I finally did it, and after I did it I stopped grieving. I'd cried all of the pain and agony out of my soul. For the first time in weeks I felt better. I started to think. Ever since that awful night, when Dana and I had confronted Katie and Pete in our house, I'd been hiding. At the time, taking the job in California seemed like a good decision. It was supposed to provide me with the time and distance I needed to start rebuilding my life. Now I realized that I wasn't using it for that purpose. I was hiding in California. During the day I was losing myself in my work, and at night I was wallowing alone in a luxury hotel room that was quickly turning into a cage. I realized that I needed to take control of my life again. It was time to stop coloring everything with hurt, anger, and despair. Dana had been right to send me that vivid description of her evening. She was being truthful with me. She was making it clear that she wasn't going to hide anything from me. She was telling me that I could trust her. Katie tried to hide part of her life from me. When I discovered what she'd been doing, when I realized that she'd been lying to me, it hurt. The hurt spawned anger and misery and left me wallowing in despair. I couldn't fault Dana for trying to be open with me. She was trying to avoid making the same mistake that Katie had made. And Katie, yes, she was seeing other men. Why shouldn't she be doing that? I'd had a lawyer serve her with divorce papers. I'd told her that I was ending our marriage. I'd left her and moved to California. What reason could she possibly have to be living the celibate life of a nun? I should be happy that she was getting on with her life. I wasn't happy about that, and I knew why. I still loved Katie, and I had reason to believe that she still loved me. Eventually, I knew that I was going to have to try to find a way to make peace with her. It wasn't going to be easy. In fact, it was going to be one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life. Still, as tough as it was going to be, I knew that I wanted to try to do it. I just didn't know how. Then again, maybe I did. I was an engineer. As an engineer, I'd learned that the easiest way to solve an insurmountable problem was to break it into a series of lesser problems. By methodically working to find solutions to each of those smaller problems, the insurmountable problem eventually becomes surmountable. I smiled. I knew how to begin. I had to try to live a normal existence in California. That meant I had to stop wallowing in my misery and start enjoying life again. It was also time to go home for a visit. Dana was offering to be my friend, and it was clear to me that a friend was exactly what I needed. I also wanted to see Katie. I needed to see Katie. I wasn't sure how I could go about doing that, but there had to be a way, and I was confident that I would find it. I had a bottle of Chivas Regal Scotch. I bought it the night I arrived in San Francisco. It was unopened. Drinking to drown despair has never seemed like a productive course of action to me. I opened it and poured myself a glass. As I sipped it, I smiled. The liquor tasted good, and for the first time in weeks I felt like I was regaining control of my life.